Texas and Clemson on Saturday, marquee matchup in the college football playoffs. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC here to give Texas fans that Clemson perspective on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Once again, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC joining us today for an explosive crossover, explosive breakdown of the Clemson Tigers. You know, we don't see them a lot, in the ACC, and so Kenton Gibbs, the expert, is here to talk about them. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by the College Football Playoffs. The College Football Playoff is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and December 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. And, of course, today's episode, first segment, second segment, third segment, all about the Texas Longhorns and the Clemson Tigers on Saturday in DKR at 3 p.m. Central. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Kenton Gibbs, once again, welcome to the show. Welcome to Locked On Longhorns. I just want you to introduce yourself, tell them what you do on the Locked On Podcast Network, and then I want to ask you a warm-up question. Are you excited for the 12-team college football playoff? Are you in favor of the 12-team college football playoff, or did you like the 4-team setup more? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, first thing first, I got to thank you for bringing me in this thing. And second of all, I'm excited to talk to a Texas guy that's actually proud of Texas. Jay from over there on Locked On Sooners, he's a secret Texas guy. He's a closeted Texas fan. And I always tell him, be who you are for your pride all year long. But he's not proud of himself. It's okay. He'll walk in his light eventually. Now, I'm a co-host of Locked On ACC, co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. And, I talk ball as much as I can because it's what I enjoy. I enjoy watching the film. I enjoy breaking these things down because I played at NC State, played the game for 17 years, and anybody who knows me will tell you what made me good at the game wasn't that I was bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else. It was that I understood the game at a very deep level. I know some Texas fans going to say I don't know ball after some of my takes today, and I'm all right with that. I'm fine. In the words of Rio the Young OG, I'm glad you're home, brother. I'm fine with that, okay? But in terms of the 12-team versus the 4-team, I think the 12-team is more where we need to be. Me personally, I had a very long-standing belief that it should have been at least 14 to 16 team playoff in which every single conference champion that's inside of the RPI top 45 gets in. And then if they're outside of that, they're replaced by an at-large bid. And then you throw in a couple at-large bids outside of that. That way, nobody could say, oh, our conference got shafted, or we didn't get, or we didn't, all that type of stuff. You eliminate that. You eliminate the UCF national champions and all that by simply saying, win the football games in front of you, and you will get in. Because it's tough for me to look at some of these teams and say, hey, you don't belong in, despite the fact that you had a fantastic year because somebody just won 1 or 2 more big games than you. And it's like, well, what makes a game a big game, right? We've all seen teams in rivalry games turn into completely different teams. I'm looking at you, Ryan Day, and Ohio State. For whatever reason, they thought that they were going to be big bad Dick the Bruise up front and go ahead and run the ball. That's neither here nor there. The reality is this. I'm excited with the playoff expanding. I think it needs to expand a little further because, again, I was tired of seeing all that whining from the SEC folks, Jonathan. I know you're an SEC guy now, and I was sick and tired of seeing. Do you know that my grandmother called me up and said, grandson, you the reason my tie didn't get into the playoff? I said, Grandma, I promise you the selection committee didn't listen to me. They don't give a damn what I got to say. If I'm in that pay grade, David Locke, give me a call. We need to renegotiate some things. Okay? If Ward and them is looking at me, we need to negotiate. But in all seriousness, I'm very excited to be here, very excited to talk shop. I'm very excited about the playoff expansion because it gives us moments like this. Texas, one of the most historic brands in college football, now adds to that storied history by being one of the first teams to host a college football playoff game on campus. What a time.
Amen, brother. Amen, brother. I agree with everything you're saying, and you'll probably get your wish. We'll probably see more expansion eventually. So I want to talk to you, and I want to ask you, what is your honest assessment of this Clemson team? And let me set this up for you. What is your honest assessment of this Clemson team? Because you look at Clemson, they're in the playoffs, they're ACC champions, right? And, there's somewhat of this mystique around this team. I wouldn't say they're hot. They've only won one game in a row, but they do come in off of a championship, right? And Dabo has won a couple of national championships. And so it's like, okay, this is a team you don't want to sleep on. But we look at this Clemson team, and they lost 3 games this year. 0-2 versus the SEC. This is Texas' opportunity to prove they're a real SEC team, right? They only made the ACC championship because Miami went out there and decided to fold against Syracuse. They were up 3 scores against SMU, and it needed a last-second field goal to win it. And we know Vegas, there's a reason there's a lot of tall and pretty buildings in Vegas. Vegas has Clemson as 12-point underdogs to this Texas team. So who is Clemson? That's my question to you.
The buildings ain't the only thing tall and pretty in Vegas, but what happens there stays there. Now, with that in mind, you talk about who is Clemson. I think that Clemson is exactly who we think they are at this point. They're an uber talented but very flawed team. What do I mean by uber talented but very flawed? I would start with the quarterback position because, hey, if anybody knows about uber talented but very flawed at that position, congratulations, Texas. You get me. You get me. We're right here. So, I believe you start with K. Klubnik, who he is vanilla Vic on paper. He can run, he can sling it, he can do everything that you need him to do on paper. He has a cannon for an arm. His decision-making at times this year looked like it clicked. It looked like, oh, he got it now. It's like Lethal Shooter when he missed that first one to say that, I understand it now. You thought that K. Klubnik had that moment this year, and then down the stretch, the wheels just kind of fell off. So, I look at him as a microcosm of this team because they can run the ball very effectively with Phil Maffa and company in that backfield. But now you get Phil Maffa banged up. The offensive line finally gets it together, and they look good for spurts, especially to start off that SMU game. They look good after being dominated by South Carolina up front. They say, hey, we're still here. We still got a squad. And then what happens to them? Oh, man, down the stretch, they could not run the ball to put away that game to save their life. It wasn't even like SMU had to bring in 8-9-man boxes to stop the run. They were doing it with very light boxes. So I look at this thing and I say, Clemson is a team that when they are firing at their highest clip, they are. To say that they're dangerous is an understatement. They can play with anybody. The problem is they're not always firing at their highest clip. They're like that old school car that you got where sometimes the pistons misfire. And you hear that real loud pop, 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 because you know that car ain't going nowhere no matter how hard you mash on the gas. That's who Clemson is this year. And the hope for the ACC, the hope for the Clemson faithful is that you see the best version of Clemson, because I think if Clemson plays their best game, Texas plays their best game, I think Clemson could beat them. The only problem with that is Clemson playing their best game is few and far in between. And if you get Clemson down, they have a tendency to kind of go into a shell. They have a tendency to kind of struggle to get back out in front of that thing. So I look at this Clemson team and I say defensively, they are who they always were to some extent. Obviously, Brent Venables is 1-on-1 when it comes to calling the defense. I think that he should have been the Bud Foster of the 2010s and beyond. And he should have stayed with Dabo forever. Now, both of them struggling separately, but that's another story for another time. So you look at this situation and you say, Clemson, again, defensively, uber talented. They've got guys everywhere. It's going to be a struggle to kind of move the ball against them in certain ways, especially because Texas relies heavily on that run game. And the running against Clemson, that's not exactly the easiest task there is. But on the flip side of that, Clemson has shown an inability to push the ball downfield. And if teams crowd that box, if teams say, you know what, sure, we'll let K get his on the ground here and there, but you're going to have to beat us with all of this pressure up in the box. You're going to have to hit those deep shots on the outside. You're going to have to find Williams. Brown's been hurt all year. What's he going to do? Wesco's a true freshman. Does he know the playbook? Brennan Stool, he's a good tight end. He doesn't appear great, though. He doesn't feel like he's taking that next step. What are you going to do then? So Clemson is a good team. Again, at their peak, borderline very good. They're just very flawed.
Yeah, it seems like a very high ceiling, but also a very low floor. And,
exactly.
We'll just have to see what happens on Saturday. I do want to ask you, you football savant, right? And so you're handling NC State, you're handling the ACC, but obviously you're a college football fan, so you've seen a little bit of the Texas Longhorns this year, I believe. You've seen a little bit of them. So from an outsider perspective, just really quickly, what do you think about this Texas team, right? Because there's a lot of people screaming that they're not battle tested. There's a lot of people screaming they haven't beat anybody. There's a lot of people screaming they could be frauds, they could be fake demons, Kenton. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think about this Texas team?
I mean, here's the thing, right? I think if you're comparing them to great teams, absolutely, this team is fraudulent. But again, if you're talking about that very good type of area, they're absolutely there. Can they push for great when they're firing at their highest clip? Absolutely. But I'd say they're basically the antithesis of Clemson because they've shown up when it mattered almost every time. They just have moments where it was just like, what's going on? What's happening here? You know what I mean? They're seeing that same type of structure with Quinn Ewers was the highest rated quarterback ever coming out of high school. He wasn't like the best in the last 5 years, the best in the last 10 years. Oh, he's the best in this class. He was the highest rate across the board. Everybody who saw the young man play said, oh, he's it. I don't know what it is until I saw him. You know, it's like the difference between when you met that girl you liked a lot versus when you met your wife. And then the world changed. That's what everybody thought Quinn Ewers was. Turns out, you know, that just wasn't the case. And so you think to yourself, well, wow, this Texas team must be disappointing. But disappointing by what standard? This is a 2-loss team, or actually what, a 3-loss team, including the SEC championship, or 2?
No, 2. Just their 2 losses both to Georgia.
So 2 losses both to Georgia. And yes, you can say, hey, that was a little bit embarrassing losing to a guy that didn't have his arm. That, you know, we very clearly know this young man, they moved his right arm and the linebackers are still sitting there buzzing like, where's the ball going to go? I wonder. But in all seriousness, this Texas team is one that, you know, some people weren't as high on after losing as much talent as they did last year. But there was a reason why nationally they were still receiving a lot of respect. And the defense, to me, is the surprise. They're the best kept secret in America, in my opinion, because this defense has been the stars of the show. This defense has been the most consistent unit. And you think to yourself, oh, they losing Big Sweat and his running partner. They're going to be very liable, very shaky against the run, and yet that hasn't been the case. You think to yourself, oh, they're losing a lot of senior experience on that defense. They're going to be, more pliable than they were last year. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I haven't seen anybody put up 40, 50 points against this team. So with that in mind, I very seriously look at this Texas team and I say the defense is the best kept secret. Everybody knows about the Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers thing. And if you got 2 quarterbacks, you got none. I understand that. But in all seriousness, this Texas running game and defense have done more than enough to convince me, hey, this team is for real. Would I compare this team to like the USC teams that had Reggie Bush and Vince Young? No. Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart? No. Would I compare it to the Vince Young team that beat them where you couldn't throw a rock in that Texas huddle without hitting a future Pro Bowler? Absolutely not. Would I compare them to, what Washington was last year? Yeah, I could compare them to that. I could say comfortably, hey, this team would give that team problems. Would I compare them to, hell, even what a Michigan was last year? Absolutely. I think this team certainly is in that type of vein. But again, I just think that if your expectation was this will be one of the best teams of all time, you're a little delusional, number one. Stop. Hey, I don't know if they allow liquor in DKR, but stop drinking it. And number 2, if you believe that this team is good for where they are and they have a chance to make a run deep in these playoffs, I think that that's completely reasonable.
For sure. Good stuff. Good stuff. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we start talking a little bit more about the personnel on this Clemson team. And then Dabo, right? Is he holding this team back with his reluctance with NIL and the transfer portal? We get deep on Clemson in the next segment after the break. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by the College Football Playoffs. Once again, it's that time of the year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs. Shout out to Locked On ACC and Kenton Gibbs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then The matchup we've been discussing and will continue to discuss. The Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, bringing my dog Kenton Gibbs back in. And you already talked a little bit about Cade Klubnik. You know, this is somewhat of a homecoming game for him, possibly a legacy game. Austin Westlake product coming back to Austin to play, as you mentioned, in one of the first college football playoff games ever on a true home site in DKR in Austin. And you talked about Cade Klubnik, and you said at times it looked like it clicked, right? It was rough last year, and then he looked a lot better this season. But then there were also times where it's like, okay, he's reverting to those old habits. I mean, I remember one time, I only bet on him once all year. I bet on him not to throw an interception. He threw the craziest damn pick I've ever seen, right? So, you know what I'm saying? I feel you, right? You know, it was good, Cade. It was bad.
Hey. Put Cade on your parlay bad list. Put Cade on your parlay bad list, okay? You don't know which Cade Klubnik you're going to get. You got a better luck betting on Cade Cunningham for my Detroit Pistons. You know, that's a much better, much safer bet, okay?
Yeah. Shout out Arlington, Texas. So, you know, we're talking about Cade Klubnik, and I want to ask you, right? Because obviously if Clemson is going to make a run, Dabo said, you know, we might become the first 3-loss national championship team ever, right? If they're going to do that, we're going to have to see the best of Cade Klubnik throughout these playoffs. Do you think he's capable of, one, going into Austin and pulling off what Vegas is calling a pretty big upset, and two, leading this Clemson team to 4 straight wins to win a national championship?
I mean, he absolutely can, but will he is the question. Again, when I talk about this team at their highest clip, there's not a single team that I look at in America right now and I'm like, oh, nah, there's no way. There's no way that, this team gets it done. There's no way that this team is good enough to make that happen. However, I am saying in reality, can I expect Cade to play his best football 4 games straight against 4 of the best teams in America? That is where I hit him with the lead course. So not so fast, my friend, because I'm sorry. I don't believe you. You need more people. I simply cannot believe it. And then again, you have to look at the pieces around him, because quarterback is the most important position in football, but it's also the most reliant position in football. There is not a position that needs more people to get it right in order for them to get it right than the quarterback position. You say, okay, what does the health of this Clemson wide receiver core look like? Because obviously, if you're talking about Antonio Williams, who, by the way, I told everybody at the beginning of the season he was going to be the star of the show at Clemson. Lo and behold, leading receiver, only guy on the all-ACC team. Well, look at that. The bald guy may know a little ball, huh? Anyway, you look at that. You look at Tyler Brown, who's been hurt all year. You look at Wesco, he has objectively been their deep shot option. He's been the guy to push that ball down the field in terms of, if you are looking at a guy that's going to go, he's going to be fast enough to get downfield and top and win you that 50-50 ball potentially. Wesco is the true freshman, but he's a damn good one. He is only overshadowed because of Smith and Williams. That's it. That's the only reason nobody's talking about him being next up at the wide receiver position. So I look at this and I say to myself, can Cade Klubnik do it? Yes. Will he? Most likely no. Because again, to me, there are too many holes in this team. And to me, at some point in time, the little Riley, not Lincoln, but his little brother, is going to be asked, hey, can you scheme up a way to get us some deep shots that are going to work? And I'm not sure that's going to be the case. Again, especially if Mafia is hurt. And the Clemson's backup running back was hurt as well coming out of last game. So it's like, you got hurt at the wrong time, brother. You got a mountain list of injuries at the wrong time, a lot like my Detroit Lions. I mean, my heart goes out to Dan Campbell and company. But in all seriousness, it is a very similar thing at Clemson where you're looking at some serious playmakers who are all hurt at once. That is the part where I'm like, this is going to be a real tough time to kind of win 4 straight, especially when you're starting at one of the most ruckus environments in all of college football. Especially when you're starting with a team that, again, the storylines all year have been about the offense. But if you watch the games, or hell, look at the damn box scores, you will know how well this Texas defense is doing. And the biggest thing about this, you talk about a Cade Klubnik homecoming. Andrew Makuba, come on down, brother. This is the inaugural Makuba Bowl, okay? This is, the team that he spurned is going to be coming back like Taraji P. Henson and Acrimony. They coming for some blood. They want to see that, brother. So I think that, this is going to be a great game from a lot of standpoints. And by the way, Makuba, what a get by y'all in the portal. Has he not been phenomenal this year? Has he not been everything that Texas fans would have hoped for and more? So, I think that this is going to be a really great game. But if you're telling me, do I think that K can rattle off 4 straight? Will he rattle off 4 straight? I doubt it. It's a slim to none chance. And Slim got his top hat on saying, my crew, let's go.
Yeah, you talk about Makuba, and this was one of the worst pass defenses in the country last year, and then you come back this year, and it's a historically great pass defense. Obviously, yes. Andrew Makuba had a lot to do with that. So, thank you, Clemson. And part of the reason that he's here is probably Dabo's reluctance, to dip, or put both feet in terms of NIL and the transfer portal. But I guess more on the NIL front in that one. I do want to ask you, though, about Dabo. And off the top of my head, I believe that he's one of only 2 active coaches in college football to have a national championship, right? It should just be him and Kirby Smart now with Mac Brown. And
Mac Brown got retired. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
we retired Mac Brown, by the way. Y'all welcome. You're welcome, rest of the college football world. You're welcome.
So with that being said, do you still view Dabo as one of the best coaches in college football? Because it's been a few years since we've seen him at the top of the mountain. And I'm not just talking about running down that hill. I'm talking about that mountain, right? You know what I'm saying? Lifting up that trophy. Do you still view him as one of the best coaches in college football? Because, it's not just about winning games. It's about recruiting. Yeah. It's about program building, and all of that. And we haven't necessarily seen a lot of that the last couple of years at Clemson.
See, Clemson fans are going to jump me because I said this was a team on the downward slide. And I said, hey, I don't expect them to be in the ACC championship game this year. Not only were they there, they won it. My fault, geez. My bad. I got jumped a little bit in the comments on Locked On ACC, and I'm a big enough man to admit when I'm wrong. I'm over 6 feet tall, over 300 pounds. I'm a big enough man to admit when I'm wrong, okay? I can admit that. I can wholeheartedly admit I was wrong about Clemson in terms of winning the ACC. But was I wrong about them losing their national relevance in that regard? No. Let me tell you why I was not wrong. Like you said, you got one of the best players in the country because they refused to pony up. Are you out of your mind, brother? It's a different ball game. Dabo Swinney said, when players start getting paid, I'll go do something else. Well, it seems to me high time for you to go start and, start the podcast. Come on to Locked On, Dabo. Come on. We need a third on Locked On ACC. We would love to have you on. They say that we 2 anti-Clemson guys anyway. We need you on there because players are getting paid now. That's the reality. And if you're upset about it, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. The reality is the labor force in college football is now being paid. And for those of you who don't believe they should be, well, I'll tell you all this much. You're looking at a guy who tore his bicep and both of his Achilles for dear old state. Now, if I had to do it all again, would I? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. However, there are more stories like me than there are stories of guys who go on to the NFL. There are more stories of guys walking away with the shakes, walking away with this or that broken up than that. So players are getting paid now because we are the drivers behind a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Guess what, Dabberton? You have to pay up. You have to pay your labor force. And if you don't, well, what you pay for is what you get. I don't know what to tell you. Everybody in theory loves to say, oh, well, if you don't do it for Clemson, if you don't do it for Texas, if you don't do it for Florida, if you don't do it for – not a single university in the world is worth that much. As we saw this last National Signing Day, with multiple players saying things along the lines, I would have loved to go to my hometown school. I would have loved to go to my favorite school, but I couldn't. Because, and I believe the young man who didn't commit to Florida State was because the offensive line coach had left. But everywhere else, every other time you heard a player say that, the only reason they said it was because of the money. Some of these kids don't come from backgrounds. Some of them do. Some of them come from places like Mansfield and whatnot. Where it's like, hey, what's a couple more? Go where you want to go. Your mama and daddy don't need it. Some of them come from Sugarland where, like, hey, man, who cares if you got a little bit more money? You know what I mean? You stay in Sweetwater. Don't nobody care if you don't got not a big deal. Some of them kids come from the trenches. Some of them kids come from where that $800,000 that you would have paid them instead of, whatever else you did with that money would have been generational. Like, hey, that changed all of our lives. So if you want to have the argument where you don't, it's going to hurt you. And that's what's happening with Dabo. He's trying to fight a fight that he's fighting a losing battle. And he's losing ground every year because everybody else is willing to pay for those top guys. And pretty soon you'll become a feeder program for those top guys, like we're seeing right now with a safety that just turned y'all generational. And of course he didn't do it alone, but you get the point. He spearheaded that, I would say, that secondary. I don't think there's any argument there. So if you're not willing to pay a guy like that, who are you willing to pay? And if you're not willing to pay nobody, look at the teams that aren't willing to pay anybody. Look what happens to them every year. Look what happens to Wazoo every year. Every single year. Every time they're good, what happens? Hey, your quarterback going to leave. Your head coach probably gone. Your coordinator's probably gone because you just don't have the money. And I would use about how Dabo spends money a quote from, I can't remember who this quote is from, but it was from a revolutionary about reading. The man who does not read and the man who does not have the ability to read are on equal footing because the man who chooses not to has given up any advantage he has over the man who cannot. The man who chooses not to spend money in NIL and the man who has no money to spend on NIL, you're now on equal footing because you've given up your chance to do so. I've experienced how loud Death Valley gets in Clemson, South Carolina. If those fans can't pony up enough for NIL, can't nobody pony up no damn money for NIL. But the reality is he's stuck on this high horse of, we're going to run it pure, or we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it that way. Okay, all right. I'm going to tell you something, Dabo. I know that you are a man that likes to read the good book and all that. The kingdom suffered violence and the violent were taken by force. Brother, you got to have some violent guys that's going to take it by force. You keep refusing to pay. Don't worry about it. You'll get a bunch of guys that's doing it for dear old state. But those guys, their belt loop's going to be closer than the guys who pay a little bit, who willing to be paid a little bit. They're going to run a little slower than the guys who are willing to be paid a little bit. And I'll leave it right there because, again, I could talk to Nazim about this, but the reality is Dabo is forfeiting his elite status by this stupid. It's a terrible hill to die on, but he's laying down and letting the swords hit him on it.
Yeah, he said this program is built on NIL, God's name, image, and likeness. The problem is the kids didn't say amen, right? So a quick word from our sponsors, and then we get out here with one question. 12-point underdogs for Clemson, but would you view a Clemson win as an upset in this college football playoff matchup? We discuss next. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by PrizePicks, right? I mentioned betting on Cade Klubnik on PrizePicks. You probably don't want to do that on Saturday. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. I've told you, I've made over $8,000 in the last year on PrizePicks. I just can't tell you where it went, right? Make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sport. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks, and PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. Right? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And today's episode also brought to you by FanDuel. Get into the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. A couple weeks left in the season and then the playoffs. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the National Football League all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, so bringing Kenton Gibbs back in for the last segment, and I see once again that Clemson is a 12-point underdog in this game, and I said that I think it's going to be a one-possession game. And I'm not telling Longhorn fans to rush to your favorite betting app and take Clemson plus the points, right? You know, we still bleed burn orange, you know, goddamn it, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You better have some pride, damn it, you know what I'm saying? But I do think this is going to be a one-possession game. I am of the thought process that even though this would be a bad loss for Texas, and part of it is because damn it, the only good team you played this year, you lost to them twice, right? So if you lose to Clemson, it's like, yeah, you really didn't beat anybody this year but an 8-4, you know, Texas A&M team, and who we thought, you know, in Michigan who wasn't good, and Oklahoma who wasn't good, right? So you need to beat Clemson. But even though this would be a bad loss, I don't think it would be an upset if Clemson won this game. I'm sorry, I just don't think it would be an upset. But obviously Vegas does because they're 12-point underdogs. What is your thought process, Kenton? I'm not asking you to pick the game, but do you think this would be an upset if Clemson beat Texas on Saturday?
So should it be an upset? And is an upset are two different things. Should it be an upset? Absolutely not. With what Clemson has done in their recent history, I don't think in any regard Clemson winning a game in late December or January should be seen as an upset. I just don't. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. However, is an upset, Travis Etienne ain't walking through that door. T-Law ain't walking through that. Dexter Lawrence is doing the sexy Dexy in New York, not winning no ball games, but he dancing, he jigging after every sack, okay? That's what it is. He is not walking through that door. Andrew Makuba is walking through that door wearing the wrong shade of orange in this game. So, you know, this is absolutely going to be considered an upset because, again, this is a team that all year, up and down, and has been they've been taken through the mud. They started off this year with not just a loss, another domination. It wasn't even competitive. The second half was quite literally laughable in that Georgia and Clemson game. And after that, everybody wrote him off. I will admit, I was in that everybody. I'm not about to sit here and say, oh, everybody wrote him off except me. I'm a smart guy. No, I'm not that damn smart. I saw them get whooped on. I said, yeah, that team is cooked. They're more cooked than a well-done Walmart steak. You know that joint that you're going to be chewing on for about 2 days? Yeah, they're more cooked than that. But this team found a way. They got themselves back. They clawed their way back. And then they lose another game to Louisville in a fashion where, again, that game didn't look all that competitive for a majority of it. I mean, Louisville flat out physical them and said, hey, we're going to stuff the box, beat us deep. We dare you. We double dog dare you. We triple dog dare you with a cherry on top. And they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. And then you go to the South Carolina game where it's like, hey, this is your chance to have a game where you prove to the nation, even if Miami wins against Syracuse and we aren't able to get into the ACC championship, we're a for real team. And you lose to South Carolina. You know, and South Carolina's offense, I mean, it's literally, hey, Sellers, go work some magic. Go do something crazy. Because I have never in my life seen that young man take a 2-step drop and say, all right, ball's going. I've never seen him take a 3-step drop and say, oh, okay, there's
literally
the
go beat Cam Newton. And
it's gonna be great. And he's like, yes, coach, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put on these goggles and I'm gonna go do something special. And it worked. It worked. So I look at this situation and I say, is this going to be an upset if Clemson wins? Absolutely. And I'll tell you this much. I know that Texas fans aren't the most rational people in the world. I know. I get it. All of the true blue bloods, none of your fan bases are rational, and I get it. It's not rational to be good at football for damn near 80 years straight. I get that. But what you're going to be looking at is a definite referendum on what the hell is going on with Sark? Is he the guy to lead our program? Because when you pour in as much to NIL as Texas does, when you have the resources at the ready, like Texas does, at your disposal, that's the word I was looking for, like Texas does, you can't justify multiple years where you get, you know, number one recruit of all time and then a Manning, for Christ's sake. You got a Manning on your roster and you can't win playoff games. People are absolutely going to start asking some questions about you, and you damn sure better be ready to answer because that would be 2 years straight of first-round exits as the favorite because I believe they were favored against Washington last year. So, I mean, what do you say there? What do you say to excuse that? I don't think there is any excuse.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to make sure I don't say nothing crazy, But if they lose to Clemson on Saturday, that would still be no bowl wins for Sark at Texas. I mean, playoffs and all of that, but that would be no wins past the Big 12 championship game last year, right? Because you lost to Washington 2022, 2023 was the playoffs, and then you lose to Washington, and then you would lose to Clemson, right? So you have no essentially postseason wins outside of a Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma State, which is like,
whatever. You stopped Ollie Gordon.
Ooh. Kenton, you didn't have me laughing this whole time, and I know that the Texas fans are going to really appreciate your commentary. Let them know where they can come find you, because I know y'all going to be talking about the game on Locked On ACC. But like I said, just let them know again where they can come find you, and just listen to more of you, because like I said, I've been laughing the whole time. I know they're going to be laughing, and they're going to want to hear some more of you.
Absolutely. Listen, all right, like I said, Texas fans, I know y'all a little off the hinges, but that's all right. Come on, bring your unhingedness to Locked On ACC. That's where you can find me and my wonderful co-host, Alex Dono. And if you're into some real niche stuff, if you're from North Carolina, somewhere in that area, or if you just got an interest in hearing me talk about how much I love Bill Belichick, his old lady is younger than both of us. We can't even call her his old lady. That's his young lady. That's his baby. That's his Similac on the – but if you want to hear me talk about that, go to Locked On Wolfpack, where we've got wall-to-wall coverage of all things NC State, all things happening in the Triangle as well that are relevant to NC State. And I'm telling you right now, if you come to TGIF_Ken, you'll get Ken the Man, not the sports analyst. So there may be some things that are a little dicey there, maybe some things you don't necessarily agree with. But come on, come all. I'm ready for it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you as always. Hook 'em. Peace.